Let's hop right into it. First piece of news. I thought you guys would find this fascinating because I did. These two gentlemen, Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve, were denied insurance to compete in the World Baseball Classic. Now, you may be wondering, what does that mean? What do you mean insurance? Where does insurance come from? So, Jose Altuve and Carlos Correa will not play in the World Baseball Classic because no one will insure them because of their prior injury history. So here's the quotes from the two guys, and I'll tell you a little bit about what insurance means in this context, okay? Correa told the Athletics' Chandler Rome on Tuesday that they wouldn't cover his $31 million salary. Now, that is a very high salary. Sometimes that comes into play. But the quote goes as follows. Correa says, "That's too big of a risk to take. You play with no insurance." So instead of going and playing and just chancing it, he's decided not to. So at the end of the day, you can still go without insurance, but you can't. Anyway, continuing the quote, "I'm definitely upset because I've been preparing really hard this offseason to get better this year and be ready early so I can be ready for the WBC. You know, he would be playing for Team Puerto Rico. A lot of pride, especially the Puerto Ricans have spoken a lot about how much pride they have in their team and their country and able to represent them in the WBC. And WBC, by all accounts, is so much fun to play in." Altuve said, "I signed the paper that I'm willing to go and play like I did in the last two WBCs. It's always an honor to represent my country. I played in the last one and the one before, and I'm trying to do it this one. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it seems like this year it's not up to me." Now those were interesting words to use. So let's keep that in the back pocket. It seems like he's probably being maybe encouraged to forego the WBC this year. We'll see if he ends up going or not. He looks like he's pushing back a little bit harder than Correa is, but he also has had some injuries recently, and he's getting a little bit older. So for clarity, the insurance, it's a policy that is taken out on the salary by the team, not the player, okay? So this is pretty common, but I don't think it's been talked about enough. So basically, the team can be reimbursed if the player misses significant time, or reimbursed a percentage of their salary. So there's been a bunch of examples of this, right? And the policies they have different types of stipulations with sometimes really high premiums. So that's not why they're not always used. A prime example of this is actually, we've got to give a shout out to New York Mets because this was actually smart. They took out a policy on David Wright. In 2012, the Mets signed Wright to an 8-year, $138 million contract. Shortly after, Wright began suffering chronic injuries, spinal stenosis, which is still one of the most sad stories. I wish we would have gotten more of David Wright, which essentially ended his ability to play full season. So the Mets had a policy that allowed them to recoup 75% of the salary if he missed more than 60 consecutive days. Now, 60 might sound like a specific number. It is. The 60-day IL was the stipulation. He had to be on the 60-day IL in order to get the reimbursement. So if you remember back, if you are a Mets fan and you remember back, he was on the 60-day IL a lot, no matter what, really, which really stunk because it basically meant he's not coming back soon. And it was always like that. So the hope was really not there. But that was how they got the money returned. So because Wright was sidelined for nearly all of 16, 17, and 18, the insurance company reportedly reimbursed the Mets roughly $15 million per year. So about 75% of the annual salary. So because the policy only stayed active if Wright was on the 40-man roster and attempting to return. So stipulation was he has to be trying to come back. That's why they kept putting him on the 60-day. So he couldn't retire or it would end, and the team would have to be on hook for the rest of the money. So that's why he can perpetually he probably wasn't going to come back. That's why that happened a lot at the end of his career. It was for the insurance to be returned. Now, there's probably a pretty good chance that David knew all this. He's like, whatever. Whatever we need to do. I don't it's effectively the same thing for me. I like being around, that's what it takes. That's what it takes. Because either way, he's going to get paid, right? Actually, I believe if he retired, he would forego his contract. So he wanted to get paid, but he couldn't be sent home. So it was one of those things he had to kind of be in limbo here to get paid. So other examples of this, and we've talked about this, Prince Fielder with the Rangers. He had the neck injuries that actually were life-threatening, or at least paralysis-threatening. And so he was declared medically ineligible to play. And so that was actually part of his. And the insurance paid $9 million of his $24 million annual salary through 2020. So he got paid, they paid out almost $40 million of that salary to the team because he had to not play. He couldn't play anymore. And that was actually built into the policy that he was declared medically ineligible. Albert Bell, same thing. 3 years left in his contract. They paid out about $27 million of the $39. And Jeff Bagwell had shoulder issues, ended his career in 2006. The Astros almost got the full price back because they had a short-term insurance policy. So these things are common. They exist. I believe Strasburg had part of his done too. These are really common to do, especially with like big contracts. But the problem is they're not as common as they could be because the premium could be 10% of that contract value every year. So if someone's being paid $20 million a year, in order to have an insurance policy on them, you'd have to pay the insurance company $2 million a year. So like, it's one of those things like, should we chance this? Because might cost us more money to insure it. It's a weird situation. You know, insurance companies are everywhere. And that's why these guys aren't playing. So let's go back to the Astros and talk a little bit about why they weren't insured. Altuve fractured his right thumb being hit by a pitch last time. So that was one big one. He literally got hurt last time. So that makes sense to be denied. They're like, you got hurt last time and we had to pay out. So why would we do it? We don't want to pay out. We're an insurance company. We like just getting money to do nothing. That's why we exist. So we're not going to insure you if we actually have to protect you, which is one of the weirdest things ever, if you really think about it. And Correa, really, if you really look at it, it's completely logical that his history with injuries would give pause to anyone looking to get an insurance policy for the WBC. Not just to name a few. He missed over a month in 2018 with a back injury. He was 60-day IL with a broken rib in 19. Missed 2 months with plantar fasciitis in 24. If you remember, between 22 and 23, he nearly signed contracts with both the Giants and the Mets before they found issues with his right ankle. So he failed 2 physicals to get a massive contract and ended up going back to the Twins. So like that's where this stuff is coming from. If you're uninsurable due to their injury history, the player's contract would not be guaranteed. So like, you can't go out there and say you're not playing for the team you're on right now. If you get hurt, the team's like, hey, we're not going to let you go because then we get nothing for our investment. But if we can get insurance, that makes it more likely to respect your wishes to want to play. In the past, in 2023, for example, players who couldn't play were like Clayton Kershaw and Nathan Eovaldi because of their issues with injuries, Tyler O'Neill for Team Canada, and Brusdar Graterol, Team Venezuela. Those 4 guys couldn't play because they couldn't get insured. A lot of people didn't really know that, probably. But like the teams basically said, we don't want you to go because our investment could get ruined. But now Kershaw's going back because he doesn't need to be insured because he is not employed by a team, which I think is awesome. So just something to realize. It's not widely reported, but that is how insurance works in baseball. Isn't that so interesting? Probably not. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's probably not super interesting. But I think it's interesting and, you know, it's my show. Okay. Moving forward, J-Ram, Jose Ramirez, signs a 7-year, $175 million extension with the Cleveland Guardians, his 3rd with the same team. He is very clearly going to spend his entire career with them, a feat that simply does not happen anymore, especially in extensions. Now, the price of his contract is not quite $175 because he has, oh, you guessed it, deferments. Deferral of $10 million each year to be paid out in 10 installments every year after. So once it's over, he will be paid basically $1 million every, 5 weeks for the whole year for 10 years, which I think is cool. Or for 7 years, sorry. So 7 years paid out. So $10 million a year for 7 years after the contract expires, which I think is cool for him. But at the same time, we have $70 million of deferments. Once again, for a team-friendly deal, because for all intents and purposes, if he went onto the free agent market right now, he would be paid an astronomical amount of money. What do you think Bregman got paid? Jose Ramirez is blowing Bregman's pay out of the water. He's getting paid $40 a year, right? But he doesn't want that. He wants to stay in the same place. It speaks to his character. He likes it just to be easy to understand. Now, he's 33 years old. This will take him to his 40-year-old year. He's a 7-time All-Star, 6 top 5 MVP finishes. What? He has a career .857 OPS with 285 home runs and 287 stolen bases. He's one of the best players, definitely one of the best players, if not the best player in Guardians/Indians history. One of the, from surefire Hall of Famer, I mean, probably pretty close to at this point already. I would say after this contract, 100% he is in. But no one does this anymore. And why people don't do this is because the money's just massive out there on the free agent market. We've talked about this a lot. This is a definite decision, his decision, okay? Nobody's advising him to do this. This is his decision. He fully understands how it works, and he wants to stay in somewhere normal, and he knows, and he very clearly doesn't have a super strong connection to how much money he has. It's plenty of money. Everything I know about Mike Trout, same thing. He just did not care about the the big money. It was mostly he felt the responsibility to the market, but it didn't really matter that much to him. So kudos to J-Ram for staying in the same place, and can't wait to keep watching him wearing this uniform. Let's see if they can actually get this thing done with him on the team. So just something to keep in mind. This is possible, but the player has to want to do it, and you got to figure out how to do it if the player wants to do it.